You may often come across the word nebula in space, but what does it mean? What is a nebula? The word generally means blurry, dusty, or spread out. It marks the difference between these objects and stars which appeared as single points in the sky. Nebulae means more than one nebula, and we know there are different types of these large, dusty objects. They are beautiful to look at and full of detail and colour. Some mark the very first stages of a star's life. All stars are born from clouds of dust and gas, called star formation regions. These clouds can live for a long time in space, rarely changing, but sometimes they are upset by nearby events. Like if a nearby star explodes, it sends out huge shock waves. Once these shocks reach the cloud, they cause it to move, and when parts of the cloud become more clumped, they attract more material onto them through gravity. The bigger the clumps get, the more material falls onto them. Eventually, the material is so thick that the temperature in the middle of the clump heats up. Once it reaches 100 million degrees Celsius, the gas in the clumps becomes hot enough to turn into a star, creating its own energy and light. We see many of these nebulae in space, places where stars are being born. Some of the most famous examples are the Eagle, the Orion, and the Tarantula nebulae. Other kinds of nebula happen at different stages of a star's life. Most stars in our universe are similar in size to the Sun. We call them low-mass stars. These stars live a long and stable life so long as they have fuel in their centres to create energy. Once the fuel runs out, the star starts the final process of its life. These low-mass stars end peacefully. The central parts of the star tumble towards the centre, and the outer parts of the star gently drift off into space. This stage of a star is one of the most beautiful, called a planetary nebula, as they looked a little like planets through early telescopes. Our own Sun will reach this stage of its life in about 4 billion years, but the stage is short, in space terms, lasting only 20,000 years. Then all this colourful material drifts away, leaving the old star's centre alone. Small but bright, we call these objects white dwarfs. Some of the most famous of these nebulae include the Dumbbell, the Helix, the Saturn, and the Ring Nebula. Another much rarer type of nebula comes at the end of a star's life too, but a very different end. Massive stars are more than 8 times the mass of the Sun, some as big as 100 times more massive. When these stars end their lives, it is not at all peaceful. When they run out of fuel, they explode as a supernova. This is when a huge shockwave passes through the star, ripping it apart. These stars are rare, with only one being made for every 100 stars born. After the blast, the bits of star thrown off into space also make a nebula. The most famous is the Crab Nebula, the leftovers of a supernova that we saw exploding almost 1,000 years ago. Other examples include SN 1006 and Cassiopeia A. The stunning colours we see in nebulae are not just pretty, they also give us information. The colours are made by the light from the stars interacting with different dust and gas. When the energy from the star's light hits the gas, it becomes hot, but the elements don't like to stay hot and energetic, so it needs to cool back down. When this happens, it releases the energy as light, but each element gives off light at an exact colour, like fingerprints. The most common colours are red, usually from hydrogen, but also from sulphur or nitrogen, green from oxygen, and blue from the scattered light around the nebula, much like the blue of our sky. However, in many of the images you see from space, these colours have been played with to create better looking images. Creating colour images of objects in space is personal. You can choose to present the colours in any way you like, but if you know their true colours, you can try to present the most natural versions of the objects you are looking at.